Talk about my biggest concerns ahead of the 2025 football season. Leaving the 2024 season, there was a lot of hype. DJ Lagway, the defense, that front seven especially. But, you look at those games, they weren't perfect. Now, no game is going to be perfect. Besides maybe the 2015 Ole Miss game. But no game is going to be perfect. There's going to be some issues. I think the biggest thing, player-wise, that I see people worry about is the DB room. You look at the corners, you have Devin Moore. Now, Devin Moore is a fantastic player. When he's on the field, he's one of the best corners in the SEC, in the entire country at that. But the thing with Devin Moore is he's not on the field enough. He's been injured every single year he's here, and he's missed a ton of games. I mean, he's missing 6+ games every single year at Florida, which maybe you can rely on more to stay healthy. You got Tyler Miles in, the new strength conditioning coordinator, came in last year. You saw the physicality improve. Maybe he can help with the injuries. I think it's something that if you can get a full season, or maybe he can miss some of those cupcake games we play, but if you can get a if you can get a full season out of Devin Moore healthy, that cornerback one spot is not an issue at all. Now, looking beyond that, the cornerback 2, 3, 4, that's when you really turn the question. I think at corner 2, you have Dijon Johnson. Now, Dijon Johnson was a redshirt freshman last year, I believe. I thought when he was playing, he was really good. I don't know if his ceiling is at the height of Devin Moore, but I think his floor is pretty good. I think he's at worst just going to get beat by those elite receivers. Like, he's not going to get burnt on plays that are going to end up costing you games. Maybe he loses a couple routes one-on-one with some really good receivers, but I think you're getting someone who still can improve. Maybe I'm wrong here, and he does have that ceiling of he was a top 100 recruit out of high school. I mean, flipped him from Ohio State. What was he out of high school? In the 247 composite. 247 composite had Dijon Johnson at 107. So, yeah, he's right there. Basically a top 100 recruit. Someone that you really love to see come here to Florida and not go up north to Ohio State. But I think if he's healthy, you have to worry about the legal situation. You got pulled over, wasn't arrested, but he was taken into custody. But it seems like everything, not that big of a deal. It feels like worst case scenario is he misses one of those 2 cupcake games to start the season. Even then, that might be a stretch. Look at like the Mekhi Barrow situation where there was less that came from probably a bigger deal. So I'm not too worried about that. If Dijon stays healthy as well, he had a little bit of an injury at the end of last season, but he played through it, kind of like what Lagway did. I'm expecting big things from him going to year 2. Now, the depth is really where you start to get concerned. That CB3 and CB4. Because you're worried if one of those 2 guys go down, that's where you're going to maybe start losing some of that good corner play. I think that corner 3, if healthy, we keep saying it, Jameer Grimesley. He was a true freshman last season, if I'm not mistaken. He played pretty well when he played sparingly, wasn't a ton, but he's had those injuries issues. A big reason he probably wasn't a top 100 recruit was because he tore his ACL, I believe, his senior season, so he didn't get to put a full season of tape on, and those injuries can be really tough. Now, he was still good enough for Nick Saban to want him, which any player that's good enough for Nick Saban is good enough for me. Look at Jaden Ball. He was someone that Saban really wanted coming out of high school, but we managed to attain him. But I think Grimesley, if he can stay healthy, is going to be a very solid corner 3. Really good question here in the comments from Mark CM. Is Javari Flowers a definite redshirt this year, or will he compete for playing time? The fact that he early enrolled, went up a year to the 2025 class, I'm really confident he's going to redshirt. Maybe you see him early on, get those 4 games you can play. Even then, I'm pretty sure he's more of a slot corner rather than a boundary. Not the tallest guy, only at 5'10", so I don't know his length. Maybe he has really good length that helps him, but from his height, you're expecting him to probably be more of a boundary, the star position, like where you have Aaron Gates and Sharif Denson. But I like Javari Flowers. He has a lot of athleticism, a lot of speed, someone that in a year or 2 could be a really good player here. I also know he does have some special team capabilities. Now, I don't know if we see that year one, because again, you probably want to get him a red shirt because he did take that extra, he left a year early. But I think Flowers is someone that in the future we're looking at. Whoops. Now, we talked about Jameer Grimesley. If he can stay healthy, he tore his ACL again. I think it was his ACL at the end of the year, which is just brutal. 2 ACL injuries in a 2.5-year span. I don't know how it's going. We'll see if he's able to play this year. I mean, I'm pretty sure he'll be able to play, matter of when. The other name everyone's looking at is going to be former 5-star, former top 15 recruit, Cormani McClain. Everyone knows the story. Goes to Colorado, or actually, shockingly, commits to Miami when everyone actually expected Cormani to commit to Florida. Give me 1 second here. Sorry. Everyone expected Cormani to commit to Florida at first. And if you remember that day, there was a weird stream, and it cuts out before he commits, and everyone's like, okay, what's happening? Then Hayes posts that commitment to Miami, and man, the timeline on that day was not a good day. But ends up flipping to Colorado, like a lot of players have, and year one, a lot of controversy around his work ethic. His size isn't there yet, and decides to enter the portal, comes to Florida as a walk-on. And that offseason, it was like he's on thin ice. A couple mistakes and he's out. They're not playing around with him. There was that rumors before the season, maybe a little bit before fall camp, that something had happened and he was going to kick off the team. It doesn't happen. And he doesn't play for the first 4-5 games of the season. But then he comes in that Kentucky game, gets that pick 6 and another pass deflection, I believe. And everybody was on a Cormani train. Former 5-star. It's like he's showing out in that Kentucky game. And then he plays against Georgia. That doesn't go so well. And then you have the injury to Devin Moore. Dijon, I believe, also didn't play in that game. Maybe he did, if I'm remembering. But you also have Jason Marshall injured. And Cormani starts against Texas, and it was not good. He didn't play for the rest of the season after that game. We moved Traquez Bridges over to corner, and that ended up being a phenomenal fix by the defensive staff. Now, he has a full offseason. I don't think we saw good work from him in the spring game. Now, the spring game, there's a big difference. The D-line was not the same. You're playing with some mixed teammates of backups, starters. It's not what's going to be the actual lineup, but I don't know if I saw enough to where I'm confident in Cormani McClain going into this 2025 season. I hope he does work out. Former 5-star, like someone that Gator fans from the Lakeland area really, Gator fans around is from the Lakeland area. Everybody really wanted Cormani to be a Gator, and everyone got hyped. I know there's people that are still hoping that Cormani takes that step, and he has that elite frame and speed. He's got to put a little bit of weight on. He's put some weight on. I don't know if he's there yet, but if he gets there, maybe he could be that next player. Another name to look out after, Ben Hanks Jr., a 4-star top 65 player. I can't remember exactly where he was ranked. Let me look that up real quick. Ben Hanks, the third. 247 composite had him 59th. Yep, so top 60 player out of Miami, Florida. Booker T. Washington. They're known for producing some good players. Shout out Treon Harris, I'm pretty sure. Treon Harris went to Booker T, didn't he? Treon Harris. Yeah, Booker T. Washington. Yeah. Question my ball knowledge. Top 122. No, but Ben Hanks, true freshman. This is the guy that everyone's excited about from Miami. We go and poach him from the Hurricanes, put Mario Cristobal in that blender, mix it up a bit, and you get this elite prospect from that South Florida region. I liked what I saw from him in the first half of the spring game. He was matching up with Dallas Wilson a lot in the first half. Wilson, everyone knows, went for 200 yards in that game, 10 catches, 2 touchdowns. In the first half, he only had 50. It was on a good amount of targets. Now, I don't know. I didn't watch the second half. I had to leave early of the spring game. So I don't know if Dallas Wilson was still the one covering. Or, sorry, if Ben Hanks was still the one covering Dallas Wilson. Even if he was, that's good on good. That's how you get better. That's how you get better. That's putting fire on a blade to help it get stronger. You're getting those good players, those great talents out of high school, putting them against other great talents. 2 guys that different sites had as 5-star competitors. So maybe, I don't know if he's going to be ready early in the season. Does need to put a little bit of weight on story with like a lot of freshmen. But you saw with Kyer Elam, his freshman year at Florida, we had CJ Henderson, you had Marco Wilson, who scoff all you want at Marco Wilson's name, but he was a pretty good corner early on here at UF, and 2019 was pretty good. So Kyer wasn't forced to play early, but as the season kept going in 2019, he kept getting more and more playing time. And by that bowl game where you had CJ Henderson, I believe CJ Henderson sat out for that bowl game, Kyer gets to start. He gets a pick against, was it Bryce Perkins, the QB? Virginia's QB. You know, he's playing really well down the stretch against everybody, not just that bowl game. And then by that 2020 and 2021 season, Kyer Elam was a really good corner. We saw Jason Marshall as well play really well his freshman season. Took a couple-year break from playing well then senior year until the Kentucky injury. Was also pretty solid. So that corner room is the number one concern, but I don't know if I'm as concerned as some other people are, because I think, you know, you got to be due to be healthy. I mean, Devin Moore, 3 years of injury. Some players just unlucky like that. There was one guy for Virginia Tech whose name is slipping my mind right at this second, but he's still a first-round draft pick and had all those injuries issues at Virginia Tech. So maybe Devin Moore can still do that. The second biggest issue, or the first, depending on who you ask, is the offensive play calling. Billy Napier's entire tenure here, the number one thing fans have complained about, outside of winning football games, of course, was Billy's play calling. I think it's something that is a bit overhated, I guess. Yeah, overhated. If a play doesn't work, it doesn't mean it was a bad play call. Sometimes you just have a player that misses a blocking assignment. You just have a receiver drop a ball. You know, it's just maybe the other team has the perfect play call on the other side that helps stop that play. Just because it doesn't work means it's a bad call. I've seen plays people get so upset about work in the exact same situations, and that coach is a genius. I think a good example, Steve Sarkisian. People love giving him credit for being a great offensive mind, which he is. He was the offensive mind behind that 2020 Alabama championship team where they had Mac Jones, Devontae Smith. Now, a lot of talent. I mean, Devontae Smith ended up winning the Heisman, still had Najee Harris and John Mechie, a bunch of other talent on that roster. But I see a lot of similarities between the play style. It's just our coaching play calling style between Billy Napier and Steve Sarkisian, to where once we see Napier with this talent, I think you could see some improvement. But another thing to look out for, Russ Callaway. I know a lot of talks like, oh, we're actually going to hire an OC this time. We end up not. You have Russ Callaway, who's now the full-time. Just flip my mouse. But the last, sorry, just lost my train of thoughts. Yeah, a lot of talk of Russ Callaway becoming OC, and you know, I heard he called some plays last year, especially when Lagway was in. So, yep, especially when Lagway was in, it looked pretty good. I think we do see him call a good bit. He has a lot of control, of the offense. You know, with Billy Napier, help set up the game plan, get those first drives going. I'm not as worried about play calling as others. So I think the other concern that most people have is going to be the defensive line depth. You lose Cam Jackson from that nose tackle spot, ends up being a 5th-round pick to the Carolina Panthers. He was a great player for us last year. Dominated, and I mean dominated that Ole Miss game with his bull rush. They could not stop Cam Jackson up the middle in that game. So you lose him, and you're like, okay. No, sorry. Like, okay, you're probably going to the transfer portal, so go get a nose tackle to replace him. The biggest guy there, Keyshawn Silver out of Kentucky, he automatically sets up 5 visits with Florida, USC, Michigan. There were some other big-time schools there and as well that he set up visits with. And it's the numbers are looking like $1 million was thrown around for a nose tackle who was a good one. But, you know, I don't know if you're paying the $1 million for him. Takes his visits to Florida everywhere, goes to USC, and it starts trending away from Florida. And then near the end of his recruitment, It's like, hey, Florida might be in it might actually end up going to Florida, and then he commits to USC on the spot. So didn't end up going well there. And then you're like, okay, we're definitely going to go get somebody else, right? Well, no, we don't end up getting somebody else. So you're looking at that nose tackle room. Who's going to be the starter? I think you have two names that you're looking to compete against each other. Jamari Lyons missed all of last season with, I believe it was a torn ACL. I can't remember exactly. In this fall of 2024, has that horrific injury, has to miss the entire season, of course. And it sucked because you had a really good freshman year, and you were really our sophomore season, actually. Yeah, sophomore, maybe redshirt freshman season. I can't remember, but it really sucks to lose him. But what happens is you end up playing your true freshman Mekhi Burrow, who a guy that not many people expected too much of out of high school, was a 3-star, not too high 3-star either. I believe he was in the 700s. Let me double check this. Coming out of Georgia, he was 756 in the nation. So not someone that a lot of people were too high on. But I thought we saw a lot of good things from Mekhi Burrow. Now, it helps he had Cam Jackson starting, has Caleb Banks right next to him, and Tyreek Sapp on the other side. So it really helps having some good players, which he will have this year as well. But does he take that next step to not just be good for a freshman, but a good college football player and someone that you can rely on at that nose tackle spot? I'd like to ask you guys, share what you think the biggest concern is for the 2025 season as well in the comments. And then you get to the spring portal. There's still some talks. Maybe you'll go out and get another defensive lineman. And you do. But that occurs after you lose DeAndre Robinson into the transfer portal. DeAndre Robinson ends up going to North Carolina, where I suspect he will start. Don't think he was going to start here. He was probably going to be the backup to Caleb Banks and split time at like that nose tackle, when we were in smaller lineups on the D-line. But, it sucks that you lose a guy who was a pretty high recruit, was committed to Texas, and ends up flipping to Florida after Blake Baker, I believe, the D-line coach, former D-line coach for Texas, goes to be the defensive coordinator at LSU. So, hey, you get these kids all any way you can. And, there were high expectations, played pretty well in sparing minutes as well his freshman season last year. But, you lose him. Now your D-line depth is really thin, and they had to go get a defensive tackle from the transfer portal, which they do. It seemed like they were prepared right away. Brandon Brett, a defensive tackle from Baylor, someone that not many people heard of because he missed the majority. He only played in the bowl game, I believe, for the Baylor 2024 season. But as a freshman in 2023, he had a pretty high PFF grade, played some good, meaningful snaps with someone who was their not Matt Rule, former LSU defensive coordinator, Dave Aranda, right? I'm pretty sure Dave Aranda spoke pretty highly of for Baylor. He was hoping that he would have a really good season. Reason he missed a lot of that 2024 season was because of some academic ineligibility, something that not really too worried here at Florida. Seems like there's a lot of miscommunication over in that Baylor program, which I don't suspect will happen at Florida, considering our coach and considering the academic part here at UF. So he's someone that I have some good expectations for him. I'm not saying he's going to go out and be the next Caleb Banks. I'm not saying he's going to end up being a possible first-round pick. But being your backup, you look at what we're recruiting for defensive tackle for this 2026 recruiting class. Dang, 2026, man. But yeah, it could be an issue, especially when you get later on deeper into the SEC play. One benefit, I think, though, is that Florida's schedule gets easier later on in the season. You have those gauntlet of a stretch against at LSU, at Miami, Texas, and at Texas A&M, that 4-game stretch. You get Mississippi State, but then you got Georgia. But then after that, you get that Kentucky, or I think you get, I think you get Mississippi State. But after that, you get Kentucky, which at Kentucky, I'm not going to say is a guaranteed win, but if we lose at Kentucky or to Kentucky in general, we've lost the plot. Billy Napier is not going to be our coach next year. Then you get that next game, not easy, but at Ole Miss, a team that lost nearly everything from its team last year, lose like 20 starters. They bring in the number 2 or 3 transfer class, but that's because of his sheer volume. I don't know. It was more quantity over quality. They got some quality, but not enough to replace a Walter Nolan, Prince Lou Manamilian, Chris Paul. Like, they had some really good players that ended up leaving that team last season, which showed as only one team had a player go for over 100 rushing yards, and it was Montrell Johnson last year. So it's a game that if we're a serious contender, Florida should win. And then you get Tennessee, a team that also has a pretty good questions about that depth. We had Hunter on a couple of weeks ago talking about that Tennessee team. He says at Florida isn't a game he currently expects to win, but rivalry game and everything. It's not an easy. It won't be an easy game for the Gators one bit, but you're hoping that you can get enough from that D line in that game that you should be able to win. Then home against FSU, there's no world where that should be a loss. I mean, I'd be shocked if the Gators lose that one. Even more so than the Kentucky game. Like, I mean, that's at Kentucky, so, maybe that's a little bit weird to say, but still. There are a lot of concerns you can have about this team heading into 2025, but again, that's something you could say about nearly every single team. You look at Texas, who a lot of people have number one. Arch's biggest start was against Mississippi State, who was not that good, who was really bad last year, I should say. A really bad Mississippi State team, started some cupcake games. Mississippi was a cupcake game, really. So I don't know if he should be as sold. I'm not saying Arch Manning isn't good, because I think he's a good quarterback. I don't know how much better he will be than Quinn Ewers, at least his first year starting. If he's the best QB in the country, like everyone says they think he'll be, why was he a backup to Quinn Ewers last year? Quinn Ewers was not that good. He was a game manager at best, and even then he messed up a lot of game management stuff, which is really weird how Quinn Ewers was one of the all-time highest-rated recruits coming out of high school, went to Ohio State, went to Texas. Interesting situation that happens there. So maybe Texas QBs aren't that good. That's a hot take for sure. But again, a lot of teams have question marks. If you're worried we have question marks, you just got to look around the entire college football. That's going to be everywhere in the country. Georgia has lost 3 5-stars and 2 other 4-star edge rushers from the last 2 years. They've lost 3 5-star edge rushers and 2 other guys that were top 170 recruits at edge as well. 5 blue chip prospects, highly rated guys. They're going to have some question marks about their depth as well, not just the Gators. I still like this team heading into this year. I'm not a fortune teller. I can't predict exactly what will happen, but I feel like there's some good fortune coming the way of the Gators.